Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started on this episode, it's important to remember that we need to be empathetic and understanding of every single guest that I have on this show, so that way they understand that they can share this stuff without having any backlash coming from the community. I think it takes a lot of bravery for someone to come on this show and be able to tell about heart-wrenching things that occur. So please be understanding, empathetic, and supportive to my guests. If you enjoyed this content, it would really help me out if you did three things. You followed me on Twitter, you subscribed to me on YouTube, and you share out this video to any of your friends who might also enjoy this content. I hope you enjoy the show. Was that something that you were passionate about, or was it something that you knew you'd have a steady job in? Because that's kind of one of the things that gets around nowadays is a lot of people say you should do what you love, but then other people say you should do where there's jobs. Like a good example is like welding and stuff like that is you can get a job fairly easy if you go into welding comparative to going for a psychology degree like me. Wow.
I think I chased it for a couple reasons. I think I chased the idea because I grew up around the industry.
Mhm.
My dad, all my life, was in various aspects of the hospitality industry, corporate hospitality, meeting planning, hotel general manager, sales, marketing, hotels, all sorts of stuff. So, and I liked it. I liked that he seemed to like it, and that it was an ever-changing kind of thing. It wasn't a 9 to 5. And so part of going to Vegas was to figure that out. Like, okay, if I want to be in this industry, what do I want to do in it? Do I want to be a general manager? Do I want to be an accountant in it? Do I want to be in food and beverage? Do I want to be, in the restaurant business? Do I want to own restaurants? What do I want to do? So part of me was to try to go figure that out.
Mhm.
And again, like what I quickly realized is, regardless of what I want to end up doing as a career in that huge industry, you don't need to go to college for it. You just don't. It is definitely, unless you're looking to be like the general manager of the Venetian properties, where maybe a business degree and those things come into play, or you're in the accounting side, the numbers side of hospitality, or the legal side of hospitality and being a lawyer. Like, it's common sense. It's how to take care of people, and it's in learning the systems around it, right? So I quickly realized that I didn't need a degree, and like I was kind of wasting the college's time and money. And like the basketball thing was cool, but I was very split. Like, it was hard to do all things well. And what I was doing in between being in college is I graduated high school, and my dad took a job at a beautiful resort in Breckenridge, Colorado. And so my parents, like, literally the week I left Lake Tahoe, they left Lake Tahoe. Like, they moved, and I was the last kid. So like, they were gone. My two older brothers were already gone and in various parts of the world doing crazy shit. And so I would then take my spring breaks and take my summers to Colorado. This is where I'd never been before, right? It was very much like Lake Tahoe. Like the Rocky Mountains and the Sierras are very similar.
Mhm.
Like, mountainous towns are mountainous towns, and ski towns are very similar. Lots of gold, rush history and history of how they were both formed by people moving west. And so very similar lifestyles and everything, right? Snow's better in the Rockies, very lighter. Sierra cement, as they call it in the Sierra Mountains, heavier, denser snow. So I would say the skiing is, once you ski in the Rockies for a while, like, you don't want to ski anywhere else, probably in between the Sierras and the Rockies. And again, my dad was in it. And when I would come home, I would get summer jobs in the industry. I was working at hotels as a bellman, front desk clerk. I was setting up ballrooms and banquets and all the stuff that you do. I was learning all the things that I was learning in theory in the classes in Vegas. So when you set up a meeting room, there is theater style, and theater style is chairs set up much like you would think. Just chairs in a theater rows, and the stage or the front of the room has a podium or has staging or has a long banquet table. Now, if you do classroom style, what that means is in front of everyone is a small table, classroom style, so they can write and take notes. And it's a row of, and so you read about this, you see diagrams in books, you're reading about all this shit in Vegas, right? Whereas in Breckenridge, in the convention center, I was looking at an order that said, set this theater for 200. The meeting is tomorrow at noon. And he's that, like, I was literally setting the shit, right? So, and it was kind of funny because, like, when I would come back, I would read it and I would go, okay, I got to set chevron for 100 people. And the new kid in banquets didn't know what chevron meant. And I go, chevron is an angled set of tables. I go, think of It's called Chevron because of the Chevron gas station logo. It's like this, right? It's tables that are chevroned at an angle. Herringbone is kind of the opposite because it's a herringbone, right? And this is all shit I learned as a freshman in college, right? And again, it just reiterated that it, like, just doing it, like, you learn that shit, right? Very quickly. I didn't need to be in Vegas, and thankfully, I wasn't spending my parents' money, right? A lot of kids were burning their parents' money to learn actually a lot of common sense shit about the hospitality industry, right? That you just learn, like, go work in a restaurant for a year as a busboy, and you will learn almost everything about a restaurant than the books and the fucking numbers. Unless your owner leaves it right on a wall. Like, the shit you got to order and the breakage of shit and all that, right? You very quickly learn doing those kind of things, right? You can't very quickly go to an accounting firm and learn how to do someone's taxes necessarily the same way. But restaurants, hotels, they all have departments that once you start doing them, how do you make a bed? How do you, like, so again, very hands-on, right? And so it was kind of going and doing those jobs in the summer every year really just led me to quitting, probably, right?
Yeah.
Because I was just every year I'd go back and then I'd sit in a classroom and go, that's really not how it is, right? Because what really happens is at lunch, you have to flip that room from fucking theater to lunch, drop rounds for 8 down there. You got to clear the room because everyone's pushed out for a coffee break. You got to, like, I just did that shit all summer, man. Like, this guy is an alcoholic professor, hasn't been in a hotel in 20 fucking years, man. Let me tell you how it really is, boys and girls, right? So you get kind of a little know-it-all-y, right?
Yeah.
As a young buck, because I did everything those summers, right? And so after a couple years, I was like, the sports thing, to your point, like, why? So I'd figured out sports wasn't for me. There were politics in what we were doing in our little world even, right? And certainly sports medicine, nope, not really my thing. Nope, didn't grab me. Lots of admiration for those guys that were learning all that stuff, but nope, not for me. Certainly service industry, doing something, absolutely want to do. And my parents live in a ski town, so I'm going to go be a ski bum and figure it out. And in the meantime, I will be working towards my career because I'm in a ski town doing hospitality work. And that's all, again, intentionally doing all these different jobs to learn everything about Beaver Run Resort was the name of this resort. Still there, great resort, right at the base of the mountains in Breck, beautiful place. And so when I quit, I call my parents. I go, hey, I'm kind of over the basketball thing. The shines wore off it. And the fraternity thing is great, but man, like,
So
again, like, probably
you can do.
Yeah, and again,
fraternity, yeah.
Yeah, and fraternities in Vegas, again, very small. Like, our house was a 3-bedroom, so you can't think necessarily traditional Greek row of East Coast colleges. I mean, we partied. That was what it was. But it, intramurals and all those things happened. But it was certainly kind of a different kind of Greek lifestyle than maybe a traditional big school, and maybe even UNLV now. I think we have a big. I think they all have real houses now or bigger houses. But like we just rented a 3-bedroom ranch house and fucking we all threw parties, different houses at different ranch houses until we all got kicked out, right? But all of that was added up to me like being like, all right. And I'm kind of a been there, done that kind of guy. It is kind of like in my esports world, like I did a lot of stuff at EG, then left. Did a lot of stuff at Got Frag, then left, right? Did a lot of production stuff independently, then left. Kind of all internal like bucket list stuff. That I kind of did, right? So I'm like, I did the college thing. I had a great time. I have friends for life out of it now. Learned some stuff about, things, but very quickly realized that the industry that I was interested in, I didn't need a degree for, right? And didn't need to waste any more time other than just diving in and doing it, right? And so I left. Called my parents, said, hey, want to come home, want to start working, want to get in the industry. And my dad was all for it. My dad, not college educated, in that sense, no degree. Mom, yes. But they were all like, yeah. Like, they also agreed that because my dad's been in the business for my entire life. So he knew firsthand that, again, depending on what you wanted to do, you absolutely needed no degree. And so I came home and immediately started working in a more full-time basis at the hotel. Management positions, front desk manager, all sorts of stuff. Ran banquets. My parents, after a couple years, moved to Aspen Snowmass. My dad took a general manager job at a resort there, so I moved with them. for a little while and took a job helping run a convention center there. And so I did basically all the stuff at a full-on convention center in Snowmass, small size, not like Dallas Convention Center, but again, same kind of stuff. So dealing with clients, dealing with setups, dealing with turnarounds, dealing with pressure, dealing with scheduling, dealing with people calling in sick, all these different things, right? At a very young age, I was doing shit that I absolutely it was management stuff, but I didn't need a degree. Like again, just stuff that you learned and then you took over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad was no longer doing it, but my dad was in the meeting planning business for a very long time, in the sense of a lot of corporations will hire a third-party company, a meeting planning company, to orchestrate all the logistics of a corporate meeting.
Yeah.
And I don't mean a corporate meeting like Tuesday at 12 o'clock in the boardroom in your office. I mean like you take 500
Yeah.
people that sell your drug, you're a pharma company, to Dallas, and you train them for a week, you wine and dine them for a week, you fly them in, you put them in so there's tons of logistics of moving people like that and entertaining them and all that. And there's a whole multi-billion-dollar business of companies that provide those services to corporations, because corporations make the phone, so they don't necessarily have the logistics knowledge of organizing a meeting for the 10,000 people that sell the phone for them, right? So they'll hire a company. Just like, rich people will use concierge to help them. Corporations will use meeting planning companies. It's kind of like handles all your logistics. You got to fly 500 people to Hawaii, all these different things. And my dad did that, worked for some of the biggest meeting planning companies in the world, EF McDonald and Marriott's, and these big companies that kind of helped define that industry. But by the time I was in college, he had moved from that side of it to the hotel side of it. He was a general manager, so groups would come to him and all that. But that world I grew up around was my dad traveling the world, doing events and helping other people with their events, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his contemporaries, his friends that would come to my house for Christmas parties and all this kind of stuff, were the people that traveled with him and actually helped run the events. They were called travel directors. And in your basic job was, these people plan the event. They spend months with IBM or Xerox or whoever going, okay, and on Tuesday night will be the welcome reception, and the guests will get a Hawaiian lei when they walk in, and then it'll be a buffet of appetizers. Like, you spend months planning every minutia, from the flights in to how they get greeted at the airport to getting them back on the plane to go home for that week or whatever it is. And so I always knew of this business, this being it's called being a TD, travel director, right? And it's a career path, right? But it's a limited career path, and I'll explain that in a second. So the idea is you're a hired mercenary. Someone else plans the event, and they then hire a series of experts to help them logistically run it.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't spend months planning it, but a week before the event, they send me a binder, and they say, you're in charge of all the transportation we need to do at the event, or all the food and beverage we're doing at the event. And here's the plan. Here's all the vendor contracts. Here's all the stuff we've organized with the hotel. And I get a book like this, and like 15 other staff get a book like this. And then we all get on an airplane, and we go to Hawaii before the group.
Yeah.
We meet with the hotel. We meet with the bus company. We meet with everybody who's in this book, and the meeting planner's there as well. The one or two people that helped plan it, right? Because they have it all. They know the whole thing, and they're the interface with the client. That's who IBM hired, right? So IBM hires you. You hired me and a bunch of people like me to come help you run your army event, if you will, for a week. Because it's like going to war. You have a battle plan. We do this on Tuesday. We do this on Wednesday. We do this on Thursday. We do this on Friday. We put them on a plane on Saturday, right? And we're one step ahead of what you're doing as a guest, preparing for your next thing, right? While you're at dinner, we're delivering shit in your room for tomorrow. It could be a goodie bag. It could be a schedule of agenda, all sorts of shit, right? So again, my job was a hired gun to help a meeting planner fix their whatever plan they did months in advance, adapt it as we went, because shit always goes wrong. You plan for an outdoor party, and now it's fucking raining. So where are we going to do this party? Hotel. Where can we do an indoor party? We got to scramble. We got to make a weather call, all these things. So you're like hired guns, right? And it's a full-on career, man. Freelance event logistics, travel director, whatever you want to call it. So my dad ran the companies that were the go-between, right? So I knew about it forever. And he always would tell, I had two older brothers, he's like, hey, if you all ever want to try this thing, man, it's a crazy career for a while. You travel the world. Someone else pays your bills. You get good food. You're seeing cool shit. It's a lot of work, a lot of hours, and it's a service industry. You're taking care of someone else, but it's a pretty fucking cool thing. And he never pressured us, but he's always like, if you ever want to do it, let me know. I'll crack those doors open, right? My two older brothers, never interested really. My oldest brother's a yacht captain, fell in love with the water. Joined the Coast Guard, never looked back. Now he's a professional yacht captain, charters and stuff for various owners. My middle brother, big outdoorsy guy, did his dip into service stuff like restaurants and all hotels, but really just to pay the bills. He's an outdoor guy, professional rock climber for a while, traveled the world in a van forever. Now he owns his own wholesale distributor company, so he reps brands on the East Coast, rope brands and shoe brands and all sorts of stuff, but he owns his own like rep firm. So I was the only one that really got the bug that kind of followed my dad's footsteps a little bit. So I did all this stuff in Breck for a while. And then the story you tell that you kind of alluded to is the story that I shifted, right? And very briefly, working front desk at a hotel in Breckenridge, this place, Beaver Run Resort. Again, I had settled into like more management stuff. Again, when I first was there at Summers and stuff, I was a bellman, I was a shuttle driver. I was just doing jobs for tips and ski passes, right? At the resort, because it was great. And bellman's a great job. Great money, cash in your pocket the whole time. You're meeting all sorts of people, hotties, families, you name it. Driving them into town, you're doing all this crazy stuff. But again, like from bellman, you go to bell captain, then you're kind of done unless you move somewhere else in front desk. And again, I wanted to be a ski bum, but I wanted to be a ski bum who was like progressing, in again what I want to do. I wasn't quitting college just to be a bellman all my life, right? I had friends that were the bell captain that had been there for 10 years, and that was their goals, and they were loving it. And I was like, no, I want to learn all of this. So I quickly went from the bellman stuff to front desk, right? All kind of the same department. But you learn the computers, you learn the inventory, you learn how they're pricing shit, you learn, like bellmen don't really get people yelling at them, right? You're helping people check in, you're helping people check out, you're giving them the tour. They might vent to you. They're really rarely mad at you, but when you're at the front desk, they're mad at you. Like you're ruining their vacation, right? So I won't go too deep into the story. But again, so I knew about the travel stuff from my dad, and I knew this was always an option for me. Hey, if you ever want to get on the road, let me know. I'll start calling people. And at the hotel we were at, groups would come in, right? I would meet the people that this job was, because they would have a little hospitality desk across my front desk. These groups, Merritt's and Carlson, would bring 200 people to Breckenridge for a week of skiing, right? And the company does a lot of fun with their staff, their employees, but then they will do a meeting day or two and they write it all off. They say it was a training session, but it's both. We're rewarding you because you're the top sales force, so you won a trip, and you and your wife get to come to lovely Breckenridge, Colorado. But we're going to throw a little bit of education in there so we can write the whole goddamn thing off. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost us anything. And they're called incentive trips, right? It's an incentive for the sales force to do above your quota. So you win a trip to Hawaii, you win a trip to Istanbul, right? But you don't just go with your wife. You go with your wife and five other couples, right? Yeah. Depending on the size of the incentive. So anyway, so I would talk to these young people like my age that were like doing this, and they were traveling the world, and they were in Breck, and I'm like, all right, my dad always tells me about this shit. And how great it is. And you see the world. And my dad used to say it's like the army. It's like being in the army, but your uniform's a little better. Because you'd wear a polo shirt and khakis or whatever. It was basically the kid's uniform. And I'm like, what's it really like? And they were like, your dad's pretty close, but, we're sharing rooms, so privacy issues. And, it is long hours. And, you might have to close the party. The people were all partying till 2 a.m., but breakfast starts at 6 the next morning. Well, you have to close that party and get up before breakfast is ready to make sure it's ready for the hotel before the kids come down or the guests come down. So, like, the hours can be, sometimes you might work 4 hours on a desk in Hawaii, and that's your shift that day, or it might be a 16-hour day. You're paid by the day. They can grind you. Like, so some gigs are easy, some gigs are hard. So they kind of gave me the kind of the real side, but they all generally were like, it's pretty fucking cool. Because since we are taking care of the guests, we often do the same stuff as guests. We eat in the same restaurants ahead of them. We do the activities before them, so we can talk about it. So like, they were telling me the bad side of it, but it was still like, okay, this is still better than standing behind this fucking desk 12 hours a day or 8 hours a day being yelled at by these motherfuckers. So I was like, okay, good to know, right? Good to know. A lot of it depends on the gig you do, right? If you go on an incentive trip to Hawaii with 200 people, it's going to be good and bad in different ways than if you're with 10,000 people in Dallas for a trade show for a pharma company. Yeah. They're just different events, different beasts, right? So how they are as staff would be different, So I was like, okay, good to know, right? And then this fateful night happens where this family from Texas is checking in. We got a lot of Texans that come to Colorado for skiing, right? Mm-hmm. And this is late 80s. So lots of oil money still coming out of Texas. A lot of oil millionaires, and they were very easy to spot. The entire family would be wearing some sort of fur outfits when they got off the shuttle bus. We're about 2.5 hours from Denver, so most people would not rent cars. They would take a shuttle service to our hotel, and then once they're in town, we had a shuttle to and from town and walk into town or whatever. But generally, so this fateful couple gets off the Rocky Mountain shuttle. Sure enough, all four of them
Fur coats.
dripping in fur coats and jewelry, gold. Dad's got gold, mom's got gold, even kids got like chain shit hanging, and not like hoodie ghetto chains, just more like Texas, like just a different kind of, almost like New Jersey Guido, if that makes sense to anyone at home, but like Texas, right? It was just like you just and here they come, like the bellman Duncan. I think it was Duncan, actually, kind of funky. Considering I know a Duncan in esports, but Duncan, different Duncan, was walking these people to me, and because he had loaded all their stuff on a bell cart off the shuttle, and basically the drill was he rolls them up, leaves the cart, tells them, "Hey, Scout, take care of you. I'll be over here when you're ready to go," because rooms are all spread out, so we didn't really take your luggage unless you drove in, because then you could park under your building. There were several buildings and elevators, but anyway, so the luggage is there. They're there. It's in the evening. It's like 9 or 10 at night. You can tell they're tired. Long trip, Houston or wherever the hell they're coming from. And crux of the story is that our resort offered ski views on a request basis, not guaranteed. Some resorts you could pay more and have a guaranteed ski view, and pay less and have a shittier view, like two different classes of the room. We had request only. So the requests were noted. If you requested it to check in, it was in reservations, it was noted. And when you got there, we looked in the system, and if we could give you your 2-bedroom with a ski view, we would. If we couldn't, and it was condos. Various side, you could have a 1-bedroom, you have a studio, 2-bedroom, a lot of condos. Great for a family vacation, kitchens, the whole 9 yards. Just awesome facilities right off the mountain. So long story short, he's checking in, and as they all do, they ask about their view. They hand me their paperwork. I pull up the computer. I'm like, oh, okay, I see that you're in a 2-bedroom. You're here till next Saturday. There's 4 of you. I see you did request a ski side view. Let me look what we have tonight. Invariably, if they were checking in late that night, and most people checked in on a Saturday to Saturday, it was a week stay kind of thing. Usually, the later you checked in, the odds were. It depended on the category of room, meaning how many of those we had left, and and how late you were checking in if you had any fucking. And sure enough, 10 o'clock at night, no 2 bedrooms. I'm pretty sure it was 2-bedroom. No 2-bedroom with a view. So standard practice. I turn on my practice standard fucking speech. Sir, at this time there are no ski side views, so I'm going to check you into a room tonight that's mountain view. And mountain really meant the back of the different mountain. It was a mountain, but it wasn't the ski slope, or it was a town view, kind of down sideways to town. And sir, I'll note. And what we do every morning is we look for checkouts, we look for availability, and then we start looking at our list, and we'll start calling people and see if you're willing to move. So if we do find one during your stay and you are willing to move, we'll all week try to move you, right? I do understand that once you move in, you go grocery shopping, you guys unpack all your stuff. It's a pain in the butt to move, but we will always try. What I would suggest tonight is don't unpack too much. Obviously you don't have a lot of groceries or anything yet, and let's check tomorrow. Midday. Check with us after checkout time, and maybe we can move you. Right? You are on the list. You're not the first on the list, and you never told them exactly where they were because they'd bring that up. You told me I was first on the fucking list. You're not first on the list, but you're not last, is what I used to always say. And we'll always play it by ear. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. No guarantees, sir. Just like that. Standard fucking script, right? Because I had said it for fucking months, right? And this guy, not happy about it at all, not gonna take it, not acceptable, starts yelling and screaming at me. That's unacceptable. Do you know how much this vacation costs? We worked really goddamn hard, blah, 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 blah. Almost like a do you know who I am? But he wasn't someone famous. But that whole kind of like entitled kind of like, how dare you? Like, we booked, we were guaranteed. And of course the script is like, no, sir, you didn't guarantee. I can show you the website. It's a request only. It says right here, so whatever agent you talked to when you called in, They said the exact same thing to you because we had websites back then. They were very rudimentary. Like you weren't booking; it was info, right? You could get some info, but really rudimentary in that sense, right? You had to really call to talk to a human to do anything. And so, that's the era of travel agents, right? Which are kind of gone away. So there's just no way that anyone told him that, right? Like, sir, I understand you're frustrated. It's a long trip. You're tired. You're frustrated. You're probably hungry. You got your family here. Uh, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, I'm not lying to you. You could come around the backside and look. Like, I could show you. There's no availability. You wouldn't understand the codes, but sir, seriously, there's nothing I can do, right? And he starts banging on the, and we had a really I don't know, maybe 2 feet, like nice wooden long ass desk, probably like 6 stations of computers and stuff. And our door to go into it was like right there, and then you'd wrap around, and you were like right inside, right on the other side of the desk. And then all the way to the end of our desk, it curved around and hit the end of the wall. But then right next to the curve, we had a nightclub called Tiffany's. I'm not sure what it's called now. And it was a really popular nightclub, both for locals and for tourists. It was great for tourists because it was at the hotel, and it was great for locals because we did dollar drink nights. Every night was a different dollar drink. So one night was dollar domestic beers, one night was dollar vodka. So any drink with vodka in it. Now, it wasn't the greatest vodkas, right? Yeah. It was the shittier vodkas. But if you're a ski bum, you bring your $10 to Tiffany's on that Wednesday night for vodka night, you'd get 6 or 7 vodkas in you, a couple tips for the bartender, and you fucked up. Yeah. Right? And that's what you did as a ski bum. You found those deals, right? So everyone loved our dollar beer nights. So there was always a line. We had a bouncer that had to check IDs. It was a very popular place, right? Got stupid at night. A couple pool tables in there as well, and foosball, so people would get stupid and start competing, like locals and tourists. Like, it was a very popular place. Like, I actually, one of my side jobs for a little while was I DJ'd inside Tiffany's for a little while, which was also fun as fuck. But anyway, so long story short, my roommate at the time, actually, Billy, and I was living with him and his wife, was the security guard on duty of the resort as well. Well, there were like 2 on it at any given time, but he had door duty, so he was carding IDs and stuff. And he like, from that door, he can like literally just like look that way and go look down the front desk, because like the front of the hotel's right there, because it was like in the corner of the lobby, right? So he could see everything from his vantage point. He could see this guy yelling at me. He could see me like doing it, and he could start to hear us, right? You could see this guy getting animated. And so he calls the other security guard, and I see the other security guard get out of the elevator and just kind of slowly walk behind us, kind of smiling at me, right? I'm like, you motherfuckers, right? And so he replaces Billy, and Billy moves closer, right? And now Billy is like leaning kind of on the edge of the front desk, but at the very end of it, right? Just watching, right? And I'm now looking over Billy, and I'm like, okay, now my backup is here. Perfect, right? Because this is not necessarily unique. Like, we get yelled a lot. Yeah. We get puffed up a lot by dads with money or angry moms who are promised something, right? It just, you get used to it. Very thick skin, right? And the View, always the View, right? But again, our leg to stand on, we never guaranteed it, so we were never in the wrong. You never be mad at us. You can not like our policy and be upset that you didn't get it, but it was like, thank God, like, we didn't sell shit and then not deliver, right? It was an easy policy to fucking defend, at least, right? So now he's like, he's visibly like yelling and screaming, and so I'm like, and I'm me, like, Scott is Scott, right? So I am doing all I can to remain like, I don't want to embarrass this guy in front of his family, right? I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to get angry, but now I'm pissed, right? He's calling me a liar. He's saying this is all bullshit. Like, he's fucking puffing up and trying to like look badass in front of the lobby, trying to make me look, hey, you're fucking resort. This happened last time. Like, no, it didn't happen last year, actually, because it never happens, right? And so I stop him like in mid rant. I go, sir, there's nothing I can do. I have to check in the people behind you. I've got Duncan here. Got your keys right here. You need to go to this room tonight. Like, I'm trying to be as polite as I can, but like, you need to shut the fuck up and get out of my face, right? And tomorrow we will try to resolve it. Call us. Paul's on duty. He's our manager. He can try to solve this issue for you. You know, maybe someone will check out. Maybe someone will no show tonight later on. You know, and through happenstance, because what we did have is we have owners. Some of these rooms were owned, right? And the owner would reserve it and maybe never use it. So there might have been an owner reserving his room that night and not show up tomorrow. Yeah. So It could become magically available, shit like that, right? So, because it didn't cost an owner to use his room, so sometimes they'd blow it off. So all sorts of things can open up a fucking room, right? For this guy. So not gonna have it, and he reaches across the desk. This is the pivotal moment. He reaches across the desk and goes to grab me, right? And he goes to grab me. This is Greg for your audience. And he grabs my tie, right? And he's going. I'm a little motherfucker, right? So I'm on my tiptoes, right? He grabs my tie and he tries to pull me over this fucking 2-foot wooden nice desk, right? My tie's a clip-on, right? Because it's a shitty fucking hotel like polyester uniform we're wearing, right?
Thank God, because ties are like unbreakable.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not. It's a fucking clip-on. Like we're not. We come out. You come down from skiing. You go to work. You throw your fucking shitty shirt on, your shitty vest. You put your clip-on tie on. You hide it away, and you go to work. Right? It wasn't meant for violence, but so it just pops right off in his goddamn hands. Right? And I start laughing and back away. And now I'm not mad anymore. Now I'm giggling because Billy sees this. Right? He's technically assaulted me. Right? He's grabbed me. He's tried to yank me over the desk. And now I'm just start laughing. I go, okay, now, sir. You really don't have a choice other than get out of this lobby really quickly and really quietly. And he's like, "What are you looking at me?" He literally throws the tie back. And he's like, "Now you've assaulted me." So here's what can happen. That security guard right there can call the Breckenridge PD, and they'll be here within 5 minutes. And you'll actually not be staying here tonight. Your family will be staying here, and you'll be staying in one of our lovely cells in town because you just assaulted, right? And I have witnesses, right? So that's option one, right? And Billy at this point is looking at us and he waves to the fucking guy, right? Because you take so much till you don't take anymore in the service industry, right? And that was my point. And Billy was just smiling, happy, like, "Hey, yeah, I'm right here. I did see this, right?" And I said, option two, I said, that's going to be embarrassing to you, your family. The cops will pull up here and they'll have the lights on. They'll have the siren going. They'll pull up right in the porte-cochere that you just walked in, where all those shuttle buses are. They will come in. I will say you assaulted me, and I want to press charges, and they will arrest you. Yeah, they'll uncuff you when you get down to town, but like really, like that. And this is me being me. Like I'm an asshole sometimes, right? I'm a little smart ass, right? And I'm like, and then it'll be embarrassing for your family. Look how tired they are, right? Your kid's crying, like trying to say stop being a fucking terrible human being, right? And so that's option one, right? Option two is again what we tried before. You go with Duncan. He's going to walk you through the resort, show you where everything is, the pools, the hot tubs, the whole 9 yards. When you get up in the morning, call down, introduce yourself to Paul. Paul has you on the list. Talk to Paul. Maybe Paul, somewhere along your journey, maybe tomorrow, maybe not, can get you upgraded into a better view for you guys. But why don't you go to the room first, right? Like get settled, get some sleep, wake up in Colorado. Like let's start this over, right? I'll forget it happened. You forget it happened. And that's your other option. So that's where we are right now, right? So what do you want to do? Grabs the key packet off the desk, turns, doesn't even really say anything, looks at Duncan, let's go fucking go, right? And I was like, God, this guy.
No in computer. Dude is a dick.
Yeah, and no, in the computer, PITA. It's a PITA. It was kind of, I was on a cruise and I shared this term with a cruise staff that had never heard it because they were getting yelled at by someone. PITA was the code we used in our computer. Pain in the ass. PITA. Simple, easy.
Yep.
You just look at it. So he got PETA. PETA complained on check-in about lack of ski side, escalated, security witness. I put it all in there, told him to talk to Paul in the morning. Right. And then I was having drinks later that night. Billy and I were kind of laughing about it, smoking about it again. Yeah, it's legal now. It wasn't legal then. But anyway, and I was like, man, fuck that shit, man. Like, I don't make enough for that. Like, what if that wasn't a clip-on? What if that guy would have punched me? Because they're always yelling at us.
Oh, yeah.
It's like being and again, it's like being a bellman was great. Like being in setups and banquets was great because you were kind of behind the scenes. But like that front desk job was like I absolutely sympathize with airline desk clerks, right? Because that job's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what the front desk was, right? Yeah, you got occasionally like if they got exactly what they wanted, you might end up on a comment card, but they rarely came down on day 3 or on checkout and said, Jesus Christ, Scott, greatest adventure ever. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
Like the human nature is to complain more and praise less, right? Yeah. So that it held true. And so I was just like, God fucking damn it. What am I doing? I'm making it. I would rather be a bellman again. I make more cash. I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have the same, easy schedule. Like I was like the 3 to 11 guy. So it was perfect. I could ski all day, sleep in or whatever. Then I worked. Then I got off in time to party. Like it was great. But like, and when you're bellman, you have to work around groups and all sorts of different shit. So, and obviously no upward mobility. So I was like, man, what the fuck am I was like, what the fuck am I doing, man? So I went from front desk to a lot more behind the scenes stuff. And then eventually my parents actually moved, uh, and I kind of started doing both. I said, you know what? I don't want the responsibility of these real jobs anymore. I don't want to be front desk. I don't want to be yelled anymore. So I'm going to take my dad up on the offer of figuring out what this travel thing's all about. And started doing, I did a couple trips a year for friends of my dad's that had meeting planning companies, and realized I really liked it. And through people that they had hired that were doing the job full time, they recommended me to other companies that were doing the travel stuff. And so I slowly went back to basically being a bellman kind of and a setups guy, because it was very easy, low stress money. And I actually, the people that were the bell captain, the bag captain would work around my schedule. So I would say, hey, can I get some shifts this week? I'm home. Or I'm not going to be able to work at all. And I basically did just enough in Breckenridge at Beaver Run between banquets and bellman to get a free ski pass. That was then my goal. Work enough hours to get the free pass, because the pass was like $1,200, right?
Yeah.
Or $800, and it was going up every year. So I'm like, I want just enough work. It wasn't about insurance benefits or anything. It was just enough work to get the goddamn pass, right? And again, I had cool enough bosses that would work around my gigs, right? So it's the best of both goddamn worlds. And then eventually I got enough gigs that I didn't even need. I could just fucking. I was like, you know what?
$dollars.
I just bought the pass, right? And then eventually I moved, right, out of Colorado. But for a while, it was the best of both worlds. I did all my work on the road, and when I came home, I was literally a ski bum that didn't need a job at home, right? It was fucking perfect. But that night, having my tie pulled, again, long story, Blake, was the impetus to go to my dad and go, you know what? I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready to see this, to do this hospitality thing on the road and see another side of it. I've done a lot of Beaver Run. I've figured out the resort side of it. And I want to live here and travel. And he's like, all right, let me make some phone calls. And it took several years to make it full time. And then I did that for fucking almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Of purely lived one place, never worked in that place, and worked on the road and did shit. Like I've never worked in Phoenix really in a full-time job in town. I helped a buddy for some events once in a while when I was living with him years ago. He owned a party planning company, still does. But that was more like fun money. But all my work was always somewhere else, which is kind of a trip, right? Again, on the road mercenary, right? But yeah, that one night was the one that went, yep, all right, Dad, you know, because none of us were like, oh, you know, I think probably every kid doesn't necessarily want to take, all right, well, Dad says I should do it, or Mom pushes me towards it, you know, so I'll be independent. I don't want to do it. But based on what those people said to me about the job, what my dad had said about the job, and then the frustration of my current thing, I'm like, yeah, it's time to take this, like help other people on the road. And I did.
So your dad was
forever.
kind of like monumental in your life, and he passed away when you were very young. You were 25.
Yeah, 25.
What was that like going through that? Because you said he had cancer?
Yeah, he died, you know, over several years of throat cancer and all sorts of cancer. Smoked Lucky Strikes, like a good chunk of his life, and then Winston's, like smoker, killed him. No doubt about it. Started smoking in the military, you know, gave away cigarettes like candy back then. And again, smoked Lucky Strikes, which are one of the worst ones you can smoke, unfiltered. You know, the brand of the Army, if you will. Died of cancer. At an early age, which is really unfortunate. Because he was only 55, and I was 25. And now, you know, roughly I can look back and say I've lived a little more than half my life without him as an influence, and, you know, certainly half with him. And yeah, I mean, I've obviously got him where he belongs, right? Still think about him all the time, certainly. And I am very much my father when it comes to my behavior, my attitudes, how I carry myself, how I act. There's no doubt. And I notice that more as I get older. How much more, and I'm okay with it in the sense of like, oh shit, that my dad said and did stuff this way, right? It's weird, right? And cancer is fucked up, and it's still fucked up. And watching any loved one kind of like get eaten alive. Like in some regards, I wouldn't trade it. Like I would. I'm glad uh, the circumstances were such that I could say my goodbyes and all those things in a
Yeah.
proper way. Sometimes people die tragically in accidents, and one minute they're there, and the next minute they're gone. That was not the case with my dad. Like he was terminal, he was dying. We all knew it, so we all the idea of making peace, if you will, although it wasn't a bad. Like my dad and I got along. Again, um, we were close in a lot of ways. And my mom, mom lives with me now. Um, so it wasn't like a great reckoning, like that I had to have, but it was nice to be able to. Like
Yeah.
so many people don't get that, whether with loved ones, families, friends, whatever. So the fact that now I wouldn't want to ever watch a human being fall apart like that again. Like that, cancer is cancer is fucking crazy. And my dad, probably the most powerful person in my life in
Yeah.
the sense of like stance, and I probably get my logic over emotion and my anger and my venom and my outspokenness from my father, because he was very much the same way. He was not a yes man in life
Mhm.
to anyone who hired him or he worked with. Good and bad, right? You take your lumps when you're that kind of person. Um, so I definitely get my backbone and my belief system from my parents. My mom in a more quiet way, and my dad in a more like, oh no fucking way. Um, and but yeah, and again, that's the thing. My dad was very powerful in the sense of um, very good salesperson, very good at telling story, very good orator, very good at um, very good out outward person in that sense, right? No, not nervous. I could probably get a lot of that, like my public speaking from him. Neither of us were the most attractive again men in the world either, so it wasn't like a confidence out of sexiness, right? Just
Mhm.
a very like not shy, whether you're standing in front of 2 people or 2,000 people. Um, and and his strength was his voice, his ability to communicate, his ability to talk and reason, and all those things. And then he lost that. Like he didn't die of lung cancer. He died of cancer of the mouth and throat and tongue. So like the things he lost first were like they cut out part of his tongue, and they fucked up his throat so he couldn't talk the same way. So he lost this confidence and this just natural bravado he had. Like it would have been different if he lost a leg, right? He didn't. He lost like this thing, his vocalness. It'd be like if you were a singer and you
Yeah.
lost your right. So that like watching that and him turn into like this lispy kind of different thing. And again, anyone who's had any touch of cancer in their life has seen it in different ways depending on the cancer, but it just fucking wreaks havoc. And then the chemicals they pump you with to save you wreak a whole different havoc on you. The chemo and all the other shit, right? And eventually it just stops working, right? It just
Yeah.
stopped working with my dad. The cancer grew, and my dad said, "That's it, I'm done," right? And having to deal with that decision that you're helpless to, you have to accept, you want to accept, it is the right decision, but you want them to fight forever,
Yeah.
right? You want them to beat it, um, and you all realize not beatable, right? Eventually, right? And thank God, obviously, even now. Um, Technology has extended lifespans, and treatments are far better and less invasive. And again, this is 27 years ago, right? Let jam you full of chemo, chop it out, hope it doesn't come back. Jam you full of more chemo if it comes back, right? And then they get to that point, right? And he certainly hit the wall. He's like, I'm done. Like it can take me, right? I can't fight this anymore. I don't want to be chopped up anymore, right? And as a family member, you just go, I get it. All right, now we wait. You know, we waited. But again, having that ability to say everything you want to say, whether it's him to us or us to them, or just hang out, I got that. And so, yeah, I lost him a long time ago, but the way I lost him, although I would prefer a less painful and demeaning way, um, I didn't get a phone call that, hey, your perfectly healthy dad died in his sleep, and I know
Yeah.
you fought with him last week, and oops, like, like that's a set of baggage I don't never have to worry about, right?
Mhm.
Everyone's baggage is different with these kind of things, and I'm okay with mine, right? You have to be after a while. It took me a while. I think everyone is like, I think everyone gets really angry about stuff like that. And again, I've had 25 years to process, like, why my dad, why me, and you can't, like, the day we were told he had cancer, it was like, well, yeah, duh. Mom, you're lucky you don't have it, right? I mean, they were daily smokers. Like, and my dad, stressful job, smoked a fucking shitload. Cigarettes killed him, right? No magical mystery to the universe on this one. Smoking cigarettes for his entire adult life killed him eventually. And my mom smoked almost the same kind of stuff, maybe less stress smoking, job related wise, but she was a smoker too. Lungs are clear to this day, right? Doesn't smoke anymore. She quit when he was diagnosed and then picked it up a little bit afterwards and then got guilted to quit again. But it did not, the same amount, if you will, like, again, every human's different, right? So the same thing that killed him didn't kill her. But she has a little bit of emphysema. Why do you think she has emphysema? Because she fucking smoked all her life, right? So anyway, I know, long rambling thing. So yeah, but he still affects me, right? Like, I am my dad's son. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I can look at my brothers and say, I am more my dad than you. You're more my mom than me. Like, we can all kind of look at that. And you're kind of in the middle, other brother. So it's interesting in retrospect, right? Because now as an adult, I had my dad long enough, thankfully, knock on wood, that I had a relationship with my dad, adult to adult, right? Not just big little kid, big dad, right? I lived with him as an adult. We worked together. I saw his flaws as an adult human, not as a parent. And and I think we came out of all of that as better people with each other, right? Better friends, better dad and son, right? And so, thankfully, I got that, right? I got to see the asshole side of my dad, not as a parent, but like as an adult to other people. I got to see his giving, loving part to his friends and his people around him, his employees, and all those different things that you don't see necessarily as a 8-year-old kid, right? So I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but thankfully I was 25 at least when I lost him and not 12. And my parents didn't divorce, and I didn't have all those weird other kinds of relationships growing up. My parents were married till he died, right? So again, I got a lot of knock on woods in my childhood, great childhood, even though I lost my dad to a horrific disease at an early age for him and an early age for me. But again, like, I think he was around long enough to teach me the life lessons he needed to teach me, if that makes sense, right? And that's all I can hope for, right? Because so many kids don't get two parents for that long, or two parents ever, right? So I can't. Um, I just wish fucking cigarettes and fucking cancer. And again, obviously, a lot more regulation now to all that shit, right? Than when my dad was growing up, or certainly even when he was an adult. But yeah, that's the dad stuff.
How'd you handle the grief?
Wouldn't have done the career. Wouldn't have done the career. It's kind of weird. Like all this stuff, I wouldn't have done the career. The career wouldn't have brought me to Colorado. Wouldn't have brought me then. Like, I might have stayed in college. I might not have gone to UNLV. I certainly wouldn't have followed in his footsteps and done a lot of hotel stuff. I wouldn't have taken his advice and got on the road. Without going on the road, I probably wouldn't have moved here to Phoenix, because that's where I met friends that lived here, and that's why I moved here to do the job here. I wouldn't have then met my ex-wife and had a great journey with her. Like, to me, it's all about journeys and experiences, right? I wouldn't, and then if I wouldn't have, like, what kind of gamer would I have been? If I wouldn't have been in Arizona when Counter-Strike dropped and I had PCs and I was already very active, uh, again, it all lines up to your mom and dad having sex, Blake.
It does. It really does.
Imagine that. And then their parents having sex. Weird. Yeah. History of the cosmos right there. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, certainly. So another thing I was going to get to was, actually, you mentioned your ex-wife, but one of the things I've noticed about you is you seem to delve very hard into work. Like, work is almost like your baby. At least the way that you talk about it and the way that you emphasize it, it is definitely, I would say, just from the little bit that I've got to talk to you, it's probably one of the major aspects of you that you kind of associate with. Has there ever been anything else that's taken that place of being that baby? Like you mentioned, you were married. Were kids ever a thought? Was it ever thinking of that maybe this is gonna be my new focus?
Um, it's funny. My wife was a gamer too, not as hardcore. Like she played counter. I got her into Counter Strike and stuff. She enjoyed the distraction as well. Kids, we talked about a few times, but we were both very selfish. She was a bartender. I was traveling. My career, literally, was 200 days on the road on a bad year and 250 or more on a good year. So I like again, very logical conversations of like, it makes no sense for us to have kids right now. I'm not home, but this is what's putting all the money in our savings account to buy a house and all these different things. So it was always like, and she, we're free spirited. When we did have time off, we wanted to travel together. So neither of our clocks were ticking. It was never really. It was never a big part of our conversation. It never, and we went our separate ways before it ever became one. It wasn't why we separated. It wasn't, and that wasn't ever part of it either. Like she wants one, I don't. It was never part of our equation in the 10 years we were together and the 6 or 7, almost 7 we were married. We were, for lack of a better word, we were both too selfish with what we were doing together and separately that it made no sense to have a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Even though people bring kids into this world with far less money and far less stability than we had, we weren't interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
So,
me and my girlfriend have talked about that.
Yeah, and again, if I had a 9-to-5 job in Phoenix, maybe it would have been a totally different conversation. But again, like literally, I was gone more than I was home, which is ultimately why we probably, well, not probably, it was one of the tenets, if you will, of the reason why we decided to divorce. It was just not. We had basically both had two different lifestyles going, and it was hard to continually bring them back together after trips and stuff. Me when I'm on the road, me when I'm home. Her when I'm on the road and she's home with all her friends. Then when I get back, it was just it gets really tedious after a while, right? 'Cause and it's not even about cheating. It's just weird, right? You've got friends over here and friends over here. It would be without the celebrity aspect of it or the any sort of fame aspect of it. It would be like being in a rock band, right? Because you're always on the road touring, right? But you got a wife at home and kids at home, and when you get home, you're not with your boys and rock touring. You're trying to do this life, right? And if you ask a lot of rock stars, that was a hard thing to juggle. Now they have to add the level of fame and fandom and groupies. I just mean the idea of being separated, and you're living one life on a tour bus. I was living one life on airplanes and hotel rooms with 50 people that I did this job with, because a lot of the same crew, like these were friends. You worked for the same companies, so you bumped into you on the same gigs, and then your crew of friends and family when you were home. And sometimes they overlapped, and sometimes they didn't. Right? It got hard.
Yeah.
Right? And it disconnected after a while. Like, what'd you do this week? Nothing. You start saying that instead of, well, here's what I did this week. Right? So yeah, it was not conducive. So kids were not in that agenda at all with my job, her career, and what our kind of plans were with saving money and buying a house. And it just never really materialized for us. And I didn't really have a huge maternal clock ticking, but maybe that's why I'm in this demographic with such younger people, and I'm taking kind of care of players and helping them. Is maybe I like to think of it more of a cool uncle thing than a dad thing, But yeah, maybe I get my helping a younger set of people fix in the world I'm in without having to. Obviously, it's not like having a parent, mind you. I'm not changing anyone's diapers.
Yeah.
Although proverbially, I've changed some goddamn diapers in esports. But yeah, so yeah, and gaming again, always been a focal part of my entertainment lifestyle. When I was a ski bum in Colorado, some of my fondest memories are me and my buddy would one of the jobs I used to do as a part-time job when I was trying to figure it all out. Again, for the ski pass, one year I didn't want to work in Beaver Run anymore because their requirements were too much to maintain the pass. I bagged groceries. This place called City Market, a grocery store. They had a great deal. You only had to work like 20 hours, and the guy in charge was totally cool with me working my shifts around my schedule. So for 1 year, I did bag groceries and pulled carts out of the snow and shit like that for the ski pass, man. Like I can fucking bag groceries, and I learned how to scan shit and run the scanners. Bananas are 4277, Blake. Like I can do all that shit. Like now when I go to the grocery store and like bag my own groceries, like the cashier's like, "You've done this before." I go, "Man, as a ski bum, this is the greatest job I ever fucking had, man." Same thing. Went to work at 4, worked the night shift at the grocery store, skied all day, got off at midnight. It's fucking perfect. Anyway, I don't know how we got on the
No,
bagging groceries job, but
it's okay.
yeah.
So one of my last questions for you. I've heard you've been a big proponent of pushing the scene to improve as far as like esports. I think that you are probably one of the most outspoken people, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Um,
Thanks.
one of the things that you mentioned is that there is a ton of shady shit. I think that is literally a quote going on that no one ever hears about because the way that journalism is set up currently doesn't really get to focus on it, or we don't ever get to see it. What do we do with that though? Like how do we start to fix problems that we can never see or know?
I think, yeah, I think transparency is a big issue um, in the industry, and what should be considered public information so we can all better the scene, and what needs to be guarded and protected for business interests of those in various parts of the ecosystem. What is it okay for a team owner to share, and what shouldn't he share? Just like in sports, those questions you ask, right? And then you got to figure out. Um, with the gold rush mentality of esports, unfortunately, unlike traditional sports, there's not going to be 10 bullshit NFL owners that pop up next year and try to sign kids to bullshit contracts because it can't happen, right? But in esports, anyone can be an owner, anyone can have you sign a contract, and they can call themselves something, have a logo, have a website, and say they're going to pay you $5,000 a month. You sign that contract, and they don't pay you a goddamn dime, and they disappear the next month, right? So the I think we go through phases where people shine spotlights on the negative stuff of esports, right? We go through these peaks and valleys where we're talking a lot more about the negative or the positive at any given time, right? Through the peaks and valleys of esports itself. I think what's happening, unfortunately, is that you've got what I would consider, well, I wouldn't even consider, you have major media organizations on the planet that are choosing to tell the fluff over the negative when they maybe should be telling more negative, right? You have major news organizations that are partnered with developer leagues, right? For insider access, for better content creation, for all these things, right? But the minute you do something like that, you open up a potential conflict of interest of, are you really going to tell the news if it goes south? Because you have a business relationship with said sport entity that you're supposed to cover. When are you supposed to be an unbiased journalist? And when are you a partner media company that is biased? Right? Where does that work in the real world? And where does that work in esports, right? I think, unfortunately, most of the people yelling and screaming and pointing shit out are outweighed by the press that is becoming PR arms that are taking the press releases and regurgitating them and making them news, which then gets picked up because this real news agency said it. It must be true. Well, no, they picked it up because this team said it or this thing said it. But who vetted it? How do we know it's really true? Right? Like, it just seems like we're too fluffy and not enough like, this is bullshit. Right? Now, we do have our bullshit writers, obviously the Richards and video with Thorin and what he does in certain aspects. But when I say mainstream, I'm saying things like ESPN and these big, huge beasts that have now decided that esports is a category worth covering. But if you look at ESPN's coverage of esports, it's not deep diving hardcore. They're not telling the nastiness, right? And there's some nastiness there, right? Now, why are they not doing that? Do they not know the nastiness? Maybe. Maybe they don't have source to it. I have had journalists reach out to me, and I know I just mentioned ESPN, but I don't want to necessarily say that it was them. Let's separate that. I have journalists reach out to me all the time because I tweet very provocative shit.
Yeah.
Right. And they say, I wish I could get actual facts to back up what you just tweeted. I've heard this as well. I believe this to be true, but I can't report it because I need something, right? And me going on record is not something, right? Although because I'm not attached,
Yeah.
So part of it is they're having a hard time finding the evidence to then report it because they don't want to be libelous. They don't want to be slanderous, depending on what format they're using. So they want facts to back up what we already know, right? Like I get that a lot. Like, yep, Scott, I'm hearing that from 5 different people, but man, can't get a single goddamn person who matters to go on record and say it's fact or show me their contract, right? Because then they would feel the confidence to go on record. Doesn't mean they need to put the kid's name in it, but they need to know that that source has been vetted, right? And so sometimes they can't vet the source, so they can't tell the story we all know is true, right? And I'm not a vettable source because I heard it from that guy or heard it from that guy. Now I trust everyone who told me, so I will tweet it because I actually know it. I believe it to be true, right? I don't tweet bullshit, right? But I'm not necessarily a source that a guy from Sports Business Journal can properly quote and use that as fact to back up these things, right? They need that, right? They get that in sports. They spend months investigating drug testing and cover-ups, and then they break stories, right? So what I don't know, Blake, is which journalists know the stories and have chosen not to investigate them, and which journalists are investigating them and hitting brick walls. Mm-hmm. And my fear is that we've got too much of number one.
Okay.
Right? That they know it, they know it's there, and they're not digging, right? Because digging and not finding something is one thing, but not even digging, that's the foul. That's the penalty to me, right? Otherwise, you're just a PR firm for whoever's press release you're regurgitating as news, right? And I'll throw ESPN under the bus a little bit, right? I have lots of affirmation for several people that write there, right? I think some of them do great work. But here I will give you an overarching, my opinion on where I think things are a little sideways when it comes to maybe journalism of that scale, right? ESPN has a partnership deal with Overwatch League, right? That gets them access, that gets them all sorts of stuff, which is great. And there's nothing wrong with that at its core if it gets them into interviews with players and all those kind of things, right? So if you go to ESPN's esports portal and you look at Overwatch coverage, there's too much to read, right? There's shit about everything. Roster changes. This team's colors are going to be this. Their logo's this. Like Jacob did shitloads of research on who the new team owners were going to be and what their rosters were going to be and what their logos were going to be and who lost the bids and like tons of investigative journalism on a whole chunk of Overwatch, right? And roster moves and all that is covered really, really well. And they have a partnership with that league. So the league in general is all over that company's shit, right? It's everywhere, right? And it's a friendly, and they told me years ago, like, we're never going to deep dive into Counter-Strike because it's violent. Like, we'll never deep dive into it because of the type of game it is. We're owned by ABC, for Christ's sake, right? We'll cover it. We'll do some stuff, but, like, we're going to cover the fantasy shit better and more. And they do. They cover League more. They cover Overwatch more. They cover Dota more, even. So, but here's my point. And this is where I get a little biased, right? And maybe it's stupid of me to be like this, but I think one of the greatest things that's happened in esports ever, and certainly for the future of it, is what these pro players in Counter-Strike and to a lesser way Riot and the rumblings of Overwatch doing it and the rumblings of Dota players doing it is forming the player association. I think that is really fucking big, right? Yes, I actively helped them, but even if I was just a Counter-Strike fan and I was sitting on the sidelines and I was just a fan, I would think that's a really fucking big deal for Counter-Strike, right? As a sports guy that understands player associations, right? Even if I was not a Counter-Strike guy, but I understood player associations, and I understood the business of sports, and I understood esports, I would think the idea of the players organizing themselves into an actual player association is a pretty big fucking deal. Now, go Google ESPN's coverage of player associations and all the news that we've generated. There's like two, right? Has ESPN reached out to interview me about the player association?
I'm assuming.
Have they reached out to interview Michael and Mads, the guy that run the day-to-day, and done an actual article on the player association? No. Have they reached out to any player and done actual articles on the player perspective of the player association? No. What have they done? They have taken interviews that we have done with other people, Half-Life TV, etc., and done their own regurgitated quick little blurb, and that is it. Now, ESPN is supposed to be the world's goddamn coverage of sports. How do they not think a player association is decent enough news that they should deep dive it a little bit? Interview me, interview Michael, who runs day-to-day, interview the players of the board. Like, they have like, and I get that you're not going to cover the game because it's violent. You're not going to cover every match and every tournament. It's also there's tournaments everywhere. It's a lot harder to cover than Overwatch League, right? Because there's no off season. Or like we just have one and it's going to start back up. But it's much harder. You need resources, and if you already deem the game violent and scary for your advertisers because of terrorism, counterterrorism, I get it. But this is esports centric, technically kind of historic news, right? That these players have organized themselves into a proper board, a proper association. They're talking to everyone in the ecosystem. To me, that is goddamn worthy of ESPN caring. Now, I don't have an ego. I don't give a shit if Jacob ever covers it. But I look at it and go, look what they do to Overwatch. Look what they do to League. And look what they do to Counter-Strike. And I'm not even going into Counter-Strike is also the second biggest game on the planet. It has the second biggest prize purse. It gives away the most prize money to the most players per average. It has the most pro teams. It is the most global game on the planet. I don't go into any of all those reasons why ESPN doesn't want to cover it because, again, they're going to lean on the terrorist thing. Yeah. But the historicness, like the fact that I've had more conversations with Ben from Sports Business Journal, a sports business journal publication, like for years I've talked to Ben about this thing that we're building. Not once have I talked to a single person at ESPN. I've seen them at events. I've talked to Jacob at fucking majors, and we have great conversations. He tells me what he's working on, and I never bitch at him, but I use it as a gauge of where their priorities are and what kind of news and content is important to that portal, right? And no offense to them. They have decided, again, where they're going to go heavy, right? And maybe their clicks and their views all back up what they're doing. I just look at it a pure philosophical thing. Like these guys are like, we wanted to be you. Gottfried wanted to be ESPN. We wanted to be like you. And now I want to be nothing like you because you're the ones that could write the hard-hitting journalism and not be kicked out of the scene, not be denied press passes. You could wave your journalistic dick all over this place and crack stories instead of Richard having to do it under a brand that can get put out of business by a brand like ESPN, right? So that kind of, I'm not mad. I know I'm ranting and I'm not mad. It's one of those, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, right? Because God, if anyone could wield a flashlight of truth and transparency, it would be a brand as big as ESPN. Right? Or Turner Sports, right? When you talk, because they don't do coverage like ESPN. They do E-League, right? So different thing. But yeah, so that I look at that and go, come on, man, just give us some. You write about Ninja, like how Google Ninja on ESPN, and then compare Ninja's press to an earth-shattering. Again, maybe I'm tooting my own horn, but what these goddamn players did in Counter-Strike will echo through the history of this game, however goddamn long it lasts. Like, we're already shaping 2019 with this ecosystem. We're helping. We're already goddamn helping everybody, right? Like, those announcements from ECS and EPL aren't in a vacuum about how they're changing shit next year, right? So it's just, I just look at that and go, come on, guys, man, you of all people should understand the ramifications of what these guys did and what they're doing. You all should realize that actually the game you cover the most, Overwatch, should already have one of these, right? Yeah. Come on. So I just get a little disappointed when you talk about press, right? And where we see, everyone is loving talking about the numbers and how great everything is and the investment in the VC and what Cloud9 is worth right now. But again, like all this shady shit still takes place over here, and some of these contracts are still too one-sided and still too contract jaily. You know, yes, improvements here and there, but like, and I know I'm friends with Richard and Duncan, so it will come off biased, but like, thank God there's guys like that are still willing to peel some onions and still get some shit for it and maybe burn bridges along the way and tell stories that no one wants to say. Because yes, we are growing in this entertainment value. This thing is real. The bubble is not esports. The bubble is not people watching other people play a video game and being entertained by it and being willing to spend some sort of cash on that, whether it's a ticket or buy a jersey. Yeah. That's not a bubble. We have proven years ago, decades ago, that the entertainment value of watching skilled gamers is here. Yep. Now it's been proven on the level of you don't have to even be good. You can be entertaining on Twitch and make lots of money, right? So entertainment and gaming is solidified. Entertainment and really good gamers is certainly solidified, right? So That's not the bubble. Now the bubble is the valuations and the VC and the investment. Like that is a bubble. People are over investing. They're investing in revenue that does not exist yet. And it's very much if we build it, they will come. But the will should be caveated with an asterisk, and will actually means maybe, might, could, possibly, depends. Yeah. Right? And so that's going to pop. This valuation is going to pop, right? And it's already popping. And the term market correction is already happening. Yeah. We've seen market correction with the Infinity properties, with Optic, and with what the company that bought Echo Fox has already corrected. We're seeing correction. We've seen ESL do corrections after they got bought by MTG and spent. Then they trim back. They all do it. GotFrag did it. And years ago, MLG bought us, infused us with a bunch of money. We ramped up, couldn't quite monetize what we ramped up to, so it all came crashing back down, right? And that's just happening now in the scale of a lot more zeros at the end of everything, right? Mm-hmm. So that's going to correct. But the idea that you and I enjoy a kid playing Counter-Strike because he's so damn good, that shit's, we're here, right? We're like kids watching shitty YouTube videos is entertainment value that's here. Right? Like, forget gaming, right? Watching Logan Paul and watching all these crazy people is already defined as an entertainment value, yep. Right? Good skill or not, right? So, yeah. So now it's just figuring out how ecosystems survive and what we're trying to do, right? And how to mold them the best way, But yeah, it goes back to, I wish the journalists of the scene, because we have journalists and we have reporters. Reporters are reporting. This is news. We report on it. Here's a press release. It's news. Investigative reporting and that type of journalism is what I wish we had more people doing.
I agree.
That we're willing to risk, and not roster leaks, because we have roster leaks. We do have that. I mean, like, let's dig into how that team owner fucked this up, and this tier organizer did this, or this set of players fucked these guys over. Let's keep ripping. Like, the more you rip these fucking Band-Aids off and you expose what happened, it's less likely to keep happening. You need examples of fucked up team owners, fucked up players, fucked up tournament organizers, fucked up sponsors, right? And you need them exposed so that it's a lesson that you never do, right? Or history repeats itself, right? We will never let the CGS happen again because we witnessed the CGS, right? So all these business models, as they come and go, we all use them and go, okay, this is too much like that. You shouldn't do it, So the more, but if everything's great and Goldman Sachs has our numbers up and Newzoo has our numbers up and valuations are through the roof and everything's shiny, well, they're not. Yeah. They're not. I can tell you right now they're not, because I got a kid who just messaged me, right, that's telling me he's owed prize money and his contract is fucked, and right, like a tournament organizer went out of business, but now they're back in business. Right? Like, So it's better, right? It's always better. That's the best thing about this. I think every year we get a little closer, we get a little cleaner, we get a little righter, But again, I think you have to expose this shit. And it just seems like some of our biggest power in those that could expose have chosen not to. And it's the same old people exposing, right? Thank God, Richard, Duncan, people like him, right? I wish the mainstream would chew less on the shiny shit and more on the problems, right? Yeah. Because they maybe don't realize that their voice would actually maybe be one of the strongest things that could help shift whatever, whether it's a team owner thing, a tournament organizer thing, whatever it happens to be, right? But as long as you just keep taking the bullshit press release and gussying it up and throwing it out there and adding even more bullshit to it, you're kind of part of the problem in some regards, and not part of the long-term solution. So yeah, my take on journalism.
No, I think that's you answered my question, so I'm pretty happy.
All right.
I will have to say, you have surpassed anyone for my longest interview, which I'm super stoked for. Personally, I've had a lot of fun.
I rant, I ramble, I go on tangents.
I
just realized I just remembered the tangent about telling you about the grocery store thing. The reason behind that is one of the coolest things about that grocery store was they had a video game rental, right? This store, the town itself, Breck, didn't have a Blockbuster or any sort of place to rent movies. So like the hotels rented them or had some you could use. But City Market had a section you could rent movies and you could rent Nintendo games, right? Super Nintendo games. So every night after my shift, I would go get a few free games, and me and my buddy that I lived with, Billy, the security guard, would like we got to beat Mike Tyson this weekend, man. We got to beat this weekend. Like we would game like motherfuckers. You know, you would ski, you would game, you would party, you would work, man. And so like again, back to like literally steps of my life, I can relate to like what games we were playing, what system we were using. You know, I can when I got that first PlayStation and Tomb Raider, right? And my roommate didn't give a fuck, and he wasn't a gamer, and he would mock me for being on the goddamn thing all day. And I'm like, fuck you, dude. Sorry, you don't get it. You play pool, man. So fucking what, right? This is my video game, right? But then when I got a PC, and that same roommate saw me playing Duke Nukem and went, hey, can I play that? And then he went and bought a PC, and we installed it on his, and we landed at his house. Like, it was like, remember 2 years ago when you were laughing at me playing Tomb Raider? Tomb Raider, fuck you. Fuck you, Chad, right? Now you're one of us, right? So all my life, you know, from a kid on, gaming has been tent-poled somewhere along the way, man. And now I can safely say it changed my life because it shifted me into careers. It shifted me into production stuff that I learned. And obviously being part of EG and being bought by Twitch gave me some financial security that I never knew would ever show up for my hard work. Yep. You know, we all grinded before there were paychecks and VC and stock options. And like when I asked for a piece of EG and I asked for a piece of Gottfrag, it was all laughable. It was like, yeah, hang on, here you go, pal. Now, when you go to work for Google as an engineer, you get stock options. It's standard. And you know those stock options are actually worth something. Yeah. But we were all like, yeah, give me a piece of it. Yeah, whatever. Like, who's going to buy, like, whatever. No one's going to buy this shit. And then all of a sudden, I mean, I can still remember when Alex came to me and said, you know, people are interested in buying EG. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like what? Like for what, 50 grand? You know, I would disclose the numbers, but I was just like, what? We're there? Okay, you know, but building it during all those journeys, none of it was in our back of our heads. Like, oh yeah, I mean, now you go work for Twitch and you get stock options for Amazon, and it's all part of your plan. Maybe it's part of the reason why you went to work for Twitch, right? But for us, we're just trying to see what this cool idea of like people playing video games for money was all about, man. And so in some regards, it's great. You know, you look at guys like Jason Lake, and you're like, all right, bravo, dude. Like Dallas Cowboys money, bro. Bravo. Right? Like, I look at guys like Jack, and no offense to Jack, but Jack came late. Jack came with League of Legends. Yeah. Right? Jack got to drive his car on the road that guys like Jason Lake and I paved, right? And Turbo and all those other tournament organizers that came before Riot and, you know, let ESL run their game. They were running other games for 10 years, right? So, like, they got to take advantage of an ecosystem in a world that was already starting to be paved, and at least we were oiling the dirt, if you will, right? So it's kind of cool to look at some of my contemporaries and go, yeah, like again, like Craig, who owned 3D, you know, owns, ESL owns it now, but like ESEA got bought by ESN. He's a vice president of North America for ESL now, or Turtle Entertainment. And I was like, yeah, he was a team owner, and he was one of the good guys. So it's like, yeah, you found a career path too, Craig. Like, it's awesome. And generally, most of the shady people that we didn't like found their way out one way or another. Like, they get cleaned out. You don't last very long. You might keep coming back as a bad penny, but it's going to be hard to really be super successful in this space if you've got a bad reputation. Because we don't fucking forget, you know?
Very small.
Very small, right? And it depends on what your transgression was, you know, if the door gets opened back up, right? And I think that's good. I think, you know, people talk about gatekeeping and all these buzzwords now, but I think a certain level of gatekeeping, like, especially when you have a clientele that is coming in with lots of money, that is brand new, that sees a gold rush, you're going to get super ethical businessmen that have great ideas and don't know how to activate on their money, and you're going to have shady people that want to take advantage, right? Yeah. And so, like, I will be here as long as I can saying, that motherfucker, this is bullshit. I might be proven wrong once in a while, and a good idea might, you know, sneak through that we shit on. Hasn't happened yet. I can almost say everything that the collective tends to shit on so far, we're accurate with, right? Shit that we had doubts about and why we had doubts about it failed, right? Shit that we're still doubtful about, we'll see, right? And it's not me, it's a shitload of us with a voice, right? That have been here for 10 plus years. and a lot more that have been here that just aren't as talkative, right? For every one of Scoots there's 5 guys like me that have my kind of experience but don't have my social media reach, weren't in front of cameras. Like my contemporaries, the guys like Nixon, the guys at Half-Life TV, the guys at DreamHack, that are my contemporaries in the scene that maybe run a different side of it. Like, we all play our part in this, right? And they do their juggling behind the scenes maybe more so than I do. So yeah, again, I think I talk about it so much because it's really just so goddamn fascinating, man. Like the history we've been down, and I only have sure I could talk a lot, but you could sit down a Smash kid, and he could talk to you about their last decade, right? And we would never overlap. We would never overlap, right? And I'm just Counter-Strike and a few other things, right? Because obviously in my EG days, I dabbled into a bunch of other games. You talk to Dota, that's been around for almost as long. You start talking to the RTS guys, right? And we all have these shared iconic moments and shared gatekeepers that have called bullshit over the years, whether it's the guys that did it in StarCraft or the guys that did it in Dota or me doing it in Counter-Strike. And again, it's just kind of, you take ownership where there is no ownership, right? And it's a collective ownership, right? Now you have game developers. We used to just want game developers to give a shit and don't fuck our game over the patch. Don't patch during a tournament and don't break our shit. That's all we hoped for. And Valve especially didn't give a shit after a while, right? I mean, after 1.6 became 1.6, just look at the history. There ain't much more that came for the bonus of the gameplay of Counter-Strike, right? Yeah, you gave us different versions. Yeah. But now we've got developers that are still that way. We have developers that don't care. We have developers that kind of care. And we have developers that actually their esport wouldn't exist if they didn't completely prop it up and pay teams to be part of it, because they're trying to figure out if there's an audience there. So instead of waiting to build an audience, they'll fast forward it. They'll start a pro league, right? And they'll hire ESL to run their pro league. They'll pay teams to pay players to be in the pro league. So now you get the big brands in, you get the big players in, and let's see if anyone will watch. And sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work, right? All these experiments are going on, right? And it's kind of cool as fuck, right?
I love esports, especially the people in esports. That's one of the things I wanted to do with my show is I hadn't seen any shows recently, at least, that actually delve into the people who are involved in the scene. I find
I think this kind of stuff is great.
The people are so
because
cool.
Everyone asks the same shit, how'd you get in? How'd you get in?
I think that's just
so
boring.
When people ask me about my dad or about my life. Yeah, and again, JP's it's more of a behind the guy than a tell me about your time at Got Frag. I've given those interviews forever, right? And that's well documented. So this kind of stuff of what makes a person tick is what I like to hear when I'm talking. When people do those bio things about players at big events, whether it's the Dota stuff or the Counter Strikes or the League, I know I know that he's the opera. I know everything about him in game. I know where he plays on maps. But tell me what his dad thought when he was 15. Yeah. And was he getting grounded? Was his computer taken away from him? Because those are the things that build the man, right? And so I like when people ask me the non-traditional stuff, how did this affect you? And I can now look at my life and go, you have taken care of players all your life. In high school, you decided to be a team manager. You took care of the players. Then in college, you took care of those players. Then when you went to Got Frag, one of the biggest things we were writing against is shitty owners and shitty tournament organizers. So we were kind of a player voice, and we were illuminating what they did, their stats. We were one of the first people that take their stats and break them down and go, let me tell you why this guy is so fucking good. Here's his stats that prove it. It's not that you just watched it. Now we have stats. We can rank shit. We can do all sorts of stuff with that. We can compare and contrast, right? And so in my mind, my Got Frag time was very much a player-driven thing. We wanted to be the best broadcasters of that game, right? First, we wanted to write about it the best. Then we wanted to be the best broadcasters, right? We didn't have that much time to be broadcasters before we got closed. But Alchemist and I and that crew, Jesuit, Alchemist, I, Shrew, even Midway, the guys that cast with us, we wanted to be better than our contemporaries. We wanted to beat DJ Weed at Counter-Strike. We wanted to beat TSN at Counter-Strike, right? And we did. I think we did. And I think we set a level that an Alchemist is still traveling the world showing people how to broadcast video games.
Very
right?
good guy.
That says something. Yeah. Now, he had some hit or misses with Overwatch League. Like he got hired to do one thing, he did what he was supposed to do. He broadcasted the message his bosses wanted to show. The audience didn't like it, so he took the heat for it. But 90% of what he showed was because he had to show it that way, not even because he thought it was the best way to do it. Counter-Strike, he gets a free reign, right? And I'm very glad he's freelancing again. I'm very glad it's back. I think he's actually talking to other game devs about other games. So, like, to see Alchemist try to take a spin on Fortnite or a Battle Royale, to see how he would tell the story. That's the words we use, right? Overwatch kids didn't like it. It's a meme to them now. Like, oh, Alchemister. They call him Alchemister because that was his tag, although he's Alchemist, right? Alchemister's going to tell us a story with third-person Widowmaker or whatever, right? He's just doing what he was fucking told, man. So, but those things, again, the road was paved by guys like Alchemist on how to show an FPS, right? Yeah. We were the first to use 5 in-game computers to show camera angles and all that kind of shit because we looked at what everybody else was doing. Like, okay, if they're taking video and doing it like radio, let's do it like the NFL does it. Yeah. Lots of cameras. How do we do that? Well, we need PCs. We need a TriCaster or something we can bring it all in. So, again, always elevating, right? And like Alchemist does it. Alchemist, now I'm calling him it. But like Jason doesn't get anywhere near the credit he deserves for the shit he did back then, right? I get all the credit for Goffrag shit, right? Midway gets all the credit for Goffrag shit. Right, but the guys that coded the stats system and the demo repositories and all the tech of our website was cutting fucking edge, man. Right. So anyway, and again, my story and my friend's story. That's what this is in a nutshell. My friends and my little story of how I got here is one of thousands, and that's what makes this so fucking cool. Right? You could dive into Counter-Strike and 100 more people will tell you shit. All the other games have their story, some newer and some growing still and figuring out their legacy, right? I mean, again, in this summer, we'll be 20 years old, man. 20 fucking years this game has endured, and now bigger than ever. We'll finish the year, unless Fortnite gives away $3-4 million in the next 2 weeks, we will finish the year in second place in prize money behind Dota. Mm-hmm. And most events, most players who've won that prize money as you amortize it. And if you take Dota's international $25 million away, their one tournament, we're number one. Yeah. We're number one in prize purse this year. And the last couple years, that can almost be said every time. Take away their big one, we're right there with them, if not better. Fortnite will beat us next year because they've got about $80 million to give away in 2019, according to them. And we're talking, we're at like 22 million, 20 million. Mm-hmm. Dota's at 40 million, so they will eclipse all of us if they give that money away next year, and because we're not going to double, we're going to be about the same. We'll maybe, and Dota won't double, and which is just crazy, right? They're just throwing money at that shit. It's fine. So be it.
Good for those people who get in and get out real quick, like those players.
Yeah,
good for you guys.
Yeah, and they'll figure it. They'll just like all those BRs, they're going to figure out what is not random enough and what is good skill wise and what really separates it. When we started playing Counter-Strike, there was no bomb. It was hostage. Yep. It was hostages. Counter-Strike was rescue the hostages for the first couple months, right? So we all played that, and then they came out with the other modes as they went, and then we quickly realized, okay, hostages get stuck on shit, and they're random, and it's really weird, and you can move them, and it's cumbersome, and this plant the bomb thing is a little more even, you flip sides, and so we all slowly embraced that, but that wasn't the first thing. Yeah. So I think whether it's PUBG or, Fortnite or any of these, they're going to figure out eventually the best set of game modes. Shit, Call of Duty decided the best way to play it is play all the modes, right? Halo decided that. They didn't pick one thing. So Pro Halo was you played Call of Duty, you played Capture the Flag, then you played Oddball, then you play, and same thing with Call of Duty. You play the Search and Destroy, then you play the Deathmatch, and they rotate. It's kind of like Overwatch. They play the different game types. We don't, we picked a type 20 years ago, and that's what we play. And it's stuck, and even within that game type, we messed with, like Europeans use chargers only, which meant only the offensive team scored because the other side was campy, and like they experimented with that with hostages and then with defusal, and then it was, we had 7 players for a while, we had less rounds for a while, and overtimes were different. And so yeah, but we as a community, we collectively, globally went, let's try this, let's try that. They're doing that, we're doing this, and over the years, we figured out pretty much now the de facto Counter-Strike standard. The only thing that changes now between tournament organizers is their overtimes. Some might be 3 and some money, and some might be 5 with some money. But basically, the rest of the game is the exact. Like, no one changes their money, no one changes their buy times differently. They're all the exact goddamn thing, which again is what you want. You want a universal sport, and a set of regulations and standards. So the kids at home play the exact same thing you play. You're just way better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really cool about esports is that there's just so many. Like, my story is unique to me, but man, so many people bleed this shit the same way I do.
Yeah.
Right? You just never hear about them. Some you hear about, vast majority you don't, man. People that have been admins for 10 years or different things, and they just don't. I get the praise, I get the shine, I got some financial rewards out of it. Knock on wood, I got more than I ever thought I would get out of this thing, and I'm not done.
Yeah.
Right? Because eventually the Player Association won't need my help anymore. I won't need to be an advisor, and I'll go somewhere back in the private sector and do something for money again. And that's awesome that opportunity will be there, right? Esports, it's cool. I think again we'll have some peaks and valleys. We'll have hits or misses with games, and we'll have little bubbles that pop here and there, and valuations that get corrected, and things that get overhyped and oversold. But again, I think the pure idea that it's entertaining to watch someone else at a video game really good compete is absolutely here to stay. I mean, it's
100% agree.
It's nothing. Yeah. It's nothing new. We were watching gladiators beat the fuck out of each other. How long ago? Like, humans like to watch other humans beat up on each other, whether virtually or physically. This is just another way for us to get that primordial competitive Jones out. If you're one of the competitors, very easy analogy, and then watching it is no different. We've watched human entertainment forever, right? In some form of another, right? And maybe eventually our wars are actually fought in computers and no one actually dies, right? Who knows where this thing goes?
That would be an interesting,
right?
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. So
I've
like
I watched, I got sucked into Ready Player One last night, right?
Oh,
it was
so
on
good.
TV, and it's good, but it's so throwaway and candy-ish and
it is.
lame. Like, the book was better, the book was throwaway, but it's definitely a nice run down memory lane. But I was just thinking, maybe we get to a point where all the 101 guys, where they're all strapped in. Maybe that's military, and maybe like people aren't really dying, right? Their avatars are dying, and militaries are fighting their wars that way. And I don't know, but I mean, we're already flying drones and doing shit without humans in them. So yeah, who knows? Anyway, you had one more question.
Yeah. So my last question. You mentioned all these different collective people. One of the questions I like to end on is, who would you like to see on the show? So you can choose anyone. I will try to reach out. I can't guarantee that I will get them, but I will try to get anyone that you recommend. So it could be someone behind the scenes. It could be someone who is actively in front of the scenes. Who would you pick that you would like to see on a show like this?
Oh man. Well, I mean, if it's me, then I have to preface it as in it's information that I don't know yet. Like, I would say Richard and Duncan are great for shows like this, but I know their history, I know their stories. So
I would love to get
Scott. I don't. Yeah, so those would be great for you and your audience, but I know a lot of the same thing. Like, I've heard these things from these guys before, right? So I would want a player maybe that I don't know enough about, because you delve into things that I haven't heard them give in interviews. So like, I would love to hear Jordan give an interview like this. I know he's given some, but I haven't listened to them. Guy like Jordan, a couple of our broadcasters like, Moses, any of the talent. Again, I personally know a lot of their stories, so it'd be like, oh, I remember that story. I mean, Jason and I were at some of the same CPOs when he was competing even. So, but for me, I think a lot of the cool stuff would be like player stuff, right? Like if you could get some of these young players from this, because even some of the older players have had these kind of interviews. But like, what if you get Stewie to talk about like some of this stuff. Like I think of some of the brief tidbits I've seen from some of the CS players when Valve or the tournament organizer does those behind the scenes bios, right? Like Tarek's done a few of those bios about his parents in Turkey and all these different things, and being Turkish and what that means to him, even though he's in the States, and Stewie with his mom and dad not being down for it, and those are usually like 10 or 15 minute like little snippets into the trials and tribulations they had with their passion. But this would be more of a long form div into that. So any top tier pro, I would love to hear their life story on, right? And their fans would as well. Um, you know, and foreigners probably even more so because their culture is so different. Like what was it like for Zipniks to grow up? Like what is school like for Zipniks? What is childhood like for Zipniks, right? I don't know shit about growing up in Denmark, right? I know what Moses' high school was kind of like, probably because he went to an American high school, right? So there's lots of ways to delve into that, right? And obviously, the older the player, the more stories they can tell you. You get right in here, or Taz in here, or someone who's lived through multiple versions and multiple comings and goings of the games. Team owners, trials and tribulations. The list is endless, right?
Yeah.
I've heard Jason Lake tell some of kind of his stories like mine. I would love to hear more of those, right? And he comes from an athletic background. He was kind of a jock, right? He was an athletic, so that's where he got his competitive Jones, right? He was one of the players. So okay, I'm too old. I'm a lawyer now. How do I get that competitive Jones back? I like video games. I'll own a team, right? And so like we're all driven in these similar but different kind of avenues towards the same love, right? The list goes on and on and on, right? Of who you could get to kind of dive into the non-like standard esports question.
Awesome. Well, I think that is all the questions that I have for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on my show. I really appreciate it, Scott. This has been Deep Dives in the Minds of Esports, and I hope everyone at home enjoys watching this.